This is Live in the Studio with G2. The show where we talk about the music we love to listen to and play. From time to time, we will have friends pop in and tell us their story, inspired by their musical journey and experience. Relax, enjoy, and subscribe.
This is part 1 of 3. All right, so today let's talk about the Beatles.
The Beatles.
The Beatles.
The Beatles.
If you're going to be a band, I think at some point in your career you got to do Beatles.
The Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles. And if you're a guitar player, you got to do some Chuck Berry. But we did Beatles.
I gotta confess, I don't know a single Chuck Berry song.
You never did Johnny Be Good?
I tried to learn. I think I learned like the intro, and then I just kind of was. I never really did anything with it because we never played it.
Oh well, that's sort of like a staple. If you're a guitar player, you gotta do Johnny Be Good.
I mean, I'm sure I could figure it out. I mean, I'm not saying I can't play. It's not beyond my ability, but it's just I just never had a need. No one ever asked me, "Hey, can you play Johnny Be Good?" I mean, it's a good song. I mean, I like it. I mean, it was great, and I mean, in everything. Even when Marty McFly did it, it was it was back. What was that? Like 1950?
That was back in the day.
Yeah.
So
at the, what is it? Under the Sea dance? What was it?
The Enchantment Under the Sea. I think it was.
Yeah,
Somebody will correct us. I'm sure. But anyway, so Beatles. Now,
yes, staple.
I'm a big fan of most, if not all, of the Beatles songs. I kind of lose interest when they get into the, what's the Magical Mystery Tour era?
Yeah. You know, when it started to get a little, to me, I felt like during that time they got a little bit too political.
Yeah,
about stuff, and I don't really enjoy
the experimental period. I call it.
I mean, as far as like if you look at it from like a audio technician realm, it was phenomenal because they were inventing things, you know. Especially,
they were trying new things.
And we'll talk about that on a different episode when we get into that area.
You see, Sgt. Pepper is probably the best album, probably of all time, because it delved into those areas that were uncharted.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's one of those things that I read somewhere that Sgt. Pepper and the Magical Mystery Tour, well, a couple of songs from Magical Mystery Tour were actually written at the same time.
Yes, I heard that as well.
From the Magical Mystery Tour, was Strawberry Fields?
Yes.
Was written at the same time that Sgt. Pepper was, and they were going to put it on the Sgt. Pepper album. It just didn't fit. But the technique was done around the same time. They were, you know, doing overdubbing kind of things and stuff that we take for granted now.
Well, it was at that time that the Beatles decided that they were no longer a touring band.
True.
They were strictly studio. And I mean, listen to Sgt. Pepper, and it becomes evident that there's at that time, and now today is different, but at that time, doing that much on stage in a concert was unheard of.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
But now there are bands that can do it. Of course, now you're talking about having pre-recorded tracks and having them triggered and all of these things that are available now that weren't available then.
That's true. And
the synthesized sounds that can duplicate that.
Was different.
You know, those were all organic sounds that were cut and chopped to give that sound in the studio. So, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you're thinking about if you made a mistake while you let's say you were playing a guitar track about a minute long and you made a little bit of a mistake, nowadays you can just go on that one specific part of the track and
with digital,
you know, but back then
in.
You had to re-record the entire thing because they couldn't line up the time signature right. They couldn't line up and so, you know, you could, you know, set in a new part on that and re-record that part, but the chances of it matching with what already recorded was very hard to do, and during that album, Sgt. Pepper's, they did a lot of that. That's why there's the way that certain things sound to give it that psychedelic sound in a way,
right?
Or an accordion. Kind of sounds like an accordion to me, to
Yeah.
where it's kind of like this shaky kind of back and forth kind of thing that that album's famous for, and more so with Magical Mystery Tour. But that wasn't necessarily intentional. It was the way that they figured out how to go back and re-record a specific portion of that one track without having to re-record everything.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sounds that they got at that point were an experiment that turned out well. But in the same case, they had issues where what they were recording didn't work. So they didn't include it. But I think at that point, music changed. The Sgt. Pepper changed everything for every band out there, I think.
Well, I think the Beatles in general changed music
Yeah.
altogether.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now we chose in
we're
our
we're gonna have another episode later on that's
Yeah,
gonna
this
talk
is-
more about that. We just want to kind of talk about how much and geek out a little bit about the Beatles, but
because-
we're gonna talk about the earlier formation of the Beatles, and specifically the early '60s to about '68. We have 3 songs
Yeah.
that we chose that we're gonna
that we're gonna play here today.
Yeah, it's live in the studio. We're gonna play them, and they range from 1963 to about '68
Right.
is the time frame that we're focusing on with the Beatles.
And you gotta keep in mind when we record here in the studio, just for those that are listening and wondering, how it's done, why it's done a certain way. When we decided to start recording, we wanted our sound to be recorded just as it would be played live. Am I right? That's so when somebody hears a recording of us, they're going to hear exactly what they would hear, or real close to it, what they would hear if they saw us play live. We use the same equipment. We use the same sound equipment. There's very little, if any, effects that are added. All the instruments are played to one track. There's no overdubbing. We don't do any layering of vocals. It's just as it would be if we were playing live. So we try and keep to that, because a lot of bands will kind of get caught into that. It sounds good. Let's put another layer. Let's make it thicker. Let's put an effect, and then it really sounds good. But then when you get to play it live, you can't duplicate that. So you're having to lean towards a pre-recorded track or a triggered sound that is pre-recorded. And so we decided we don't want to touch those areas. So what you hear is what you see with us.
Yes, I mean a lot of other acoustic groups.
And there's
I'm
only
not-
2 of us.
Yeah, there's only 2, maybe a third, but we don't speak to him.
Since the incident.
Since the incident, we don't go into that. But which we're not against, by the
No,
way.
absolutely not.
Of doing like the loop pedals.
No,
or
I'm not
anything.
against
not
any of
against
that.
pre-recorded stuff. It's just
I'm a
with
big fan of technology.
Yeah.
I like that.
No, and a lot of acoustic groups use the pre-recorded stuff, and a lot of the ones that we draw inspiration from do use them. But
Right.
for what we want to do at this time, with our music and covers that we decide to rearrange and whatnot, it's just not needed for what we want to do.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
we want a little bit more of a raw sound to it, and we actually like it when we mess up.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of interesting
it's
to pull
organic.
yourself out of that. Yeah.
it's really an organic sound. It's true. It's live. It's what it is, and let's do a song. Let's without further ado, let's do one. We're gonna
we'll play it, and then we'll talk a little bit
let's-
about it.
let's go from earliest to newest. Let's start
Okay.
with
Yeah.
All My Lovin'.
Okay. Good
We're gonna
one.
do All My Lovin' from Beatles,
Mhm.
and this is 1963. You remember what album that came off of?
That was from the With the Beatles album, which came out
With the
in
Beatles.
it was 1963, and it was
I don't think I have that album.
I don't have that album, but it did hit. It peaked actually. I believe it actually peaked at number 45 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April of 1964.
Wow. Well, so there you go. It's
So,
released
you know,
in '63.
Yeah, but it didn't really hit the charts. But it was released in the UK.
Okay,
In 63.
in 63. So really to make it around to the States.
Yeah.
Now, they came to the States in 64?
I believe so.
Yeah, so this...
I would have to look. I'm going to find a little bit more information about that.
So,
But-
yeah, so All My Lovin' and all those original songs there were probably making quite a ruckus here in the States,
Mhm.
waiting for the Beatles to arrive. So here we go. All My Lovin', 1963, Beatles, as played by G2.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day. And I'll send all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I'm missing, and hope that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. All my loving, all my loving, all my loving, I will send to you.
All right, so there.
yeah.
All My Lovin', acoustic by G2. I think it came out pretty good.
No, there's always some things that we could improve on.
Yeah, but
But I think overall it captures the spirit.
I like the fact that there are some mistakes there. There's not anything drastic, but it keeps you on your toes. And it's a fun song to play. It's just a fun song to play. You had something that you were.
Yeah, I found a little tidbit of information that I thought was very interesting about All My Loving was that the walking bass that Paul McCartney played, obviously, during All My Loving, he
Yeah.
actually got inspired about that from a song by the Dave Brubeck Quartet called Kathy's Waltz.
Kathy's Waltz.
Which is it's interesting because Kathy's Waltz is it's a slower, it's a laid back kind of jazz
like
kind of
this.
sound, yeah. Yeah.
Kathy's Waltz.
That's
You can
just
hear the bass.
I know-
There's Paul McCartney on the
that just-
left-handed bass.
it's interesting to me how he got that. Because,
Yeah.
but I mean when you're a genius like Paul McCartney,
It just
mean-
goes to show you never know where your inspiration is going to come from.
that's true. It's but I thought it was very interesting that he got that. And for those that don't know who David Brubeck Quartet was, or they actually were the ones that made the song Take 5.
Take 5.
Famous.
Another good famous song.
So if any jazz fans out there, if you're familiar with Take 5,
we may do
we
do a
should.
show
I think we should.
on some jazz tunes. We do a few jazz tunes, and we've written a couple of jazz tunes.
That's true.
We should do a show on jazz. That would be really cool because our setup is jazz.
It is.
It's-
Well,
it's
that's
a
my
duo.
biggest inspiration in music in general is jazz.
And we're a duo. Well,
Yeah.
actually a trio, but we again,
well,
since the
don't-
incident.
we don't.